watching the documentary, you start realizing, especially now when people are talking about their stories, that there's still bodies that they're finding in the homes that have been devastated by the flooding and everything. And it's so horrifying, but then you think about the history of this country, and we're so not removed from just how much people hate Black people. And it's hard to sit and think that the reason that people don't like you is literally because of your skin tone. Race and class. Like, it's so interesting. I can wrap my head around classism, about people just being so arrogant because they have more money and stuff. Because humans are just this stupid and belligerent. But it's just much harder to wrap your head around the fact that because what are we supposed to do about the sun? Literally the skin thing and other parts of the body have created adaptations to the environment like any other animal. We are part of the animal kingdom. We are part of nature. Humans are a part of the world. So we evolve to be as adaptable as possible to the world around us. So when people, that's why I just be like, oh, you're an idiot. Whenever I interact with somebody who's like racist and they show their racism, and whether it be like this quote unquote passive aggressiveness, there's no such thing as passive, it's all aggressive. But when people show that to me, I'm just like, oh, you're just a fucking moron. I lose complete interest in having further interaction because I'm like, what are we supposed to do about the sun? We have more pronoun melanin, and it becomes more pronoun, meaning we become darker when the sun and the UV rays become more intense. And these morons will be like, yeah, your stupid body protecting yourself from the sun. These dumb Black people. You know how stupid that sounds? So that's why I don't argue with people who are racist. I don't go back and forth with people who are this belligerent. And there were some videos that were showing from, like, they were doing testimony with Congress, and they were talking to these white men about what happened. There was these Black women who were there. They were at the Superdome. They were at the, I think it was called the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, I think at the time. Fuck the NFL. But they went to different stadiums, and the women were sharing their stories about what happened. Obviously, it's very brutal. And as I've watched the documentary, and they didn't hold anything back, which I'm glad, because no documentary should hold anything back. It's a documentary. Don't hold back. So, these Black women went and spoke in front of Congress, and of course, the moment that they said a word like concentration camp or Holocaust-like environment, the white dude was like, oh, I would want you to refrain, meaning shut your fucking mouth, and don't call it a concentration camp. And then she went into detail into saying, giving why it would be. He had the nerve to say, because there wasn't one element in it, like not as defined as it was in the Holocaust, right? The Jewish Holocaust, because there's other Holocausts. There's the Armenian Holocaust. There's other Holocausts that happened in human history. If you go to a class on the history of violence, they talk about this stuff. So whenever one community wants to make it seem like they're the only ones who have suffered brutality, they haven't been. But it's mainly to talk about this, and also not to diminish another. And I can't believe we have to say this, because people really hear what they want to hear. They really want to oppress people so badly. They hear what they want to hear. You see, if you can't talk to somebody, there's nothing to go further on. So when they were having a conversation, the guy kept talking about, well, I want you to not call it that. And then she went to say, like, but it was. We found people who were unalived in locker storages. The whole place, at nighttime, they talked about how all they could hear was gunshots and screaming. They didn't have any food. They didn't have any clean water. You can die from not having clean water in a couple of days. They had no medical attention. And so my thing is that I think the thing that really blew people's mind, like the people from, NOLA, was that they didn't think They thought that slavery was so far removed. This is the delusion that American society, revisionist history, has made people really forget how evil this country is to black people. So they were shocked. They were like, wait a minute, they're just flying over us, not picking us up. But the moment our white neighbors stand on the roof, they come and pick up our neighbors who are white. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And they were shocked. And it was interesting to see, like, the individuals from NOLA talk about it, because I work in healthcare system. I work with people who have a lot of trauma, PTSD, CPTSD, all different types of, like, uh, health conditions, or even like different types of disabilities. And there's a very consistent look that the individuals were telling their stories about what happened in Katrina. It's always a far away look and stare, because like your mind is going back to that moment, and literally your body freezes you in that moment as they try to tell it. Or they'll shake their head and say, like, I just can't talk about it. They probably can't talk about it because when you go through trauma, your mind and your body go back to the time for which it happened. So for some people, right, it could be a very intense recall, right? These people didn't get any help. They were just dropped off anywhere in the United States, anywhere. And I remember when they were talking about how they were going to give them like $2,000 or something a month to help them, and then it wasn't even like that. And then to finish killing off the Negroes, they wanted to kill off the black people. When they finally got the trailers were so poisoned that people developed cancer. People died from those trailers. This government was doing a mass genocide against black folks. What are you talking about? You didn't feed them. You didn't give them water, and then you have the nerve to say throughout the country, you told everyone in the country that these poor black people, because it was a poor area, that they were just some wild, degenerate animals going out here looting. They weren't looting. They were foraging for stuff because you purposely didn't give them clean drinking water. You didn't give them medicine. You didn't give them food. I don't know why black people keep acting like we're interacting with people who like us. Well, did Flint, Michigan not explain this? Did not, Michael Brown getting gunned down not explain something to people? Like, these people hate us. There's no other explanation. And not only does this country hate its own citizens, because look how they treat their own citizens, they really do hate other countries. Is America only good for killing people? Are we only that good? We're only good for like making weapons to like cause harm to other people in other countries? Are we really only good for this? Because I was reading about like the jobs, and I was reading about how we are observed by other countries and what we're known for. And one of the things we're supposedly known for is education, medical advancements, and innovation, and obviously weapons. We are known for this. So I just don't have any empathy for like people around me anymore when they have like weird petty conversations about. I'd be so disconnected. Yeah, the other day I went to I was celebrating my birthday, and I was just having fun doing some things. And I remember someone coming to me and telling me about some petty argument that these business partners were having at this event. And I said to myself, like, this is so unimportant to me. Like, I'm out having a good time because, this is just, not every day could be doom and gloom and talking about all the crap that's happening, because you'll be sick. You'll develop a condition. You'll have to go to like probably a psychiatrist if all you ever did was talk about the horrors in the world, especially in America, that have been done to its people and also done to like other people. You'd be fucking sick. But when I hear those petty conversations about the business partners not getting along for whatever stupid reason, I'm just like, I'm so disconnected from this. Like, I listened to them, but I was just like, I'm so disconnected from this, because I'm sorry, after you watch something after I read the book, the delectable Negro, which is essentially talking about how in America, every piece of a black person is consumed, like from their body, their sexuality, to everything. What we come up with, our innovations, every piece of us is consumable, and this just translates into other people in a capitalist environment. That was such a hard read because it went into like gruesome detail about what happened to Turner, Nat Turner. If you remember, if you know anything about Nat Turner, they actually ate Nat Turner. They didn't just kill him because of the slave revolt. No, these people aren't just this. Like they're crazily psychopathically brutal. So after they kill them and they dismember them and all this stuff that they do ritualistically, burning people, charring them, and so they would wear them and they were eating them. And they went around like bragging about the pieces that they had of him, like wallets and stuff that they made of his body. Yeah. Because they were so afraid of like another person like him coming around and like revolting and causing him. Yeah, that's pretty insane. So I always tell people, like, if you really think that I always tell people the reason why Haitians have been treated so horribly and why they're in this debt and why they're always going to be treated this way is because of the viciousness of the revolution that they did. Because that's the level of viciousness you have to do against another vicious group of people. If you actually read what happened with the like Haitian like revolution, they didn't just kill these people. They did exactly what they do, which is like they'll parade people's bodies around. That's what they did in slavery. They would like tie children's bodies and stuff and like ride them around or like dismember them and like display their bodies like. So Haitians did this. That's why I respect Haitians. Like Haitians don't be playing, but Haitians snap these French peoples all the way up, and that's why they are forever being treated this way. But will they come back there and try it again? Probably never, because the Haitians were just like we are. I think one of the things I read, if I let me know if I'm getting my history incorrect, but I believe what I read was that it got so bad that, like, you know how people say like they worship the God, they worship to like some spiritual like thing to help ease the pain or get them through that tough situation. I was reading that like some had like worshipped supposedly like the devil, right, to help give them the strength to go through the situation, to go through what they had to do to survive. And I was just like, but that makes sense to me, in the sense that like when you're going through something so horrid, I don't even think I can fully imagine what it was like during that time, because right now I can sit here and talk with you. During that time, you weren't even allowed to speak. You know, women weren't allowed to speak. Women weren't even allowed to like have a personality. So it's not even fathomable for me to even conceive how horrifying it must have been for people to be like, we're going to have to do some horrid shit to you. Yo, read the revolution, the Haitian revolution. People always talk about read the French Revolution, like the people always talk about Les Miserables. Read about that and like watch the play and read the story of the French. Read the Haitian Revolution and you'll be like, oh, okay, I see what happened here. Anyway, back on track. Sorry, I didn't mean to go into any damn history, but I'm just saying when I'm hearing people tell their stories about what happened to Katrina and them growing up, because remember they also had a documentary called Katrina Babies. They talked about the trauma, the aftermath of individuals who went through that. And people sharing their stories and talking about how essentially they heard, and I think this is true because this country is known for bombing black communities. They heard a loud boom before the water started to rise into their homes. Every single person who talks about what happened talks about how they heard a loud boom before all of a sudden there was this massive flooding. And it's documented that they bombed the levees before. So you don't think they would have bombed them again? So it was a genocide. They were looking to kill and get rid of the majority of the occupants in the area. And when people say that's not what happened, that is what happened. They didn't feed them. They didn't give them water. They waited weeks. It doesn't take weeks for people to die from dehydration. It took weeks for them to send any help. And when they did, it was the most brutalist. They had white people in the area who were literally going around shooting black people, and none of them got arrested. There's been no arrest, no nothing. So they were just running around doing whatever they wanted to do. And people are like, oh, this country is just we're just such good people. We just love each other. No, we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't. And they've beaten the shit into they've beaten black people so down so badly that we will sit here and take the crumbs and try to make the best out of it. But look what happens when you try to make the best out of it. NOLA people had some of the lowest income in the nation. There's nothing more you can do to people except for kill them off. When black people try to make the best out of their situation out of nothing, when they have fucking nothing and they're being poisoned, they have nothing, they're still like, yeah, but fuck you, you Negroes. We're going to just genocide you. So, and they love it. They love this. It actually, the stories make them happy. That's why I don't argue with racist people. If you look at like there's books, like there's a book called the lynching or something, and it's a cryptographical novel talking and showing all the lynchings. All these white people, their kids, everyone would sit around and enjoy it. Do you think listening to stories is gonna do anything? They love it. They like it. They like the stories. They like to see the pain and the anguish of individuals telling their stories. So, it's porn for them. That's why people call it like. They call it what's called porn. But it's porn for them. They like it. They actually jerk off. They get off on it. So, that's also why some black people don't like watching stories about slavery, reading stories about slavery, reading stories about the brutalities that have happened. But it's like, even though you don't want to read about slavery, we're still dealing with the slavery situations. We're still dealing with the prejudice and the racism. And unfortunately, because we live in a very revisionist history. Okay, for example, people were talking about the situation with Gaza, right? Talking about what's happening with Gaza, calling it genocide. It is. And people are like, there was a scholar who wrote a book recently called People Will Act Like This Was Always Wrong or something like that. That people act like people always act like this, they were the side of the good, or they always do that this was wrong. And essentially the title was just saying that people will walk around with revisionist history. They will actively walk around cognitive dissonance and act like nothing ever happened. Dr. Davis talked about this. Dr. Davis recently had a lecture, and she talked about like slavery and talked about the genocide in Gaza. And she said that we walk around with slavery. We walk around Jim Crow. We walk around with all these laws, and we walk around like this shit never happened. We would rather pretend than to fix any situation. So when I see the stories, I feel for black people. We are so amazing. And I don't mean that in no magical, spiritual, Negro way. I mean, we are amazing in the sense that other communities, we need trauma therapy. Those individuals that went through that need trauma therapy. I was recently watching Dr. Joy DeGruy talk about how individuals who saw the 9/11 situation when the planes crashed into the Twin Towers, that people in another country receive PTSD treatment because they just saw it. They just saw it on TV. So imagine being a person who went through that traumatic situation in Katrina, where you see all different types of dead bodies floating around in the water. You see relatives, like people, whole families holding hands trying to stay together. And like, just the trauma of that. And the trauma of individuals, us watching it, us as black people watching it and seeing it and being like, you can't, okay, I can't look at people and think like, oh, you wouldn't do that to me because, why? Because I was born in California? Why? Because I went to some prestigious fucking white school? These people will kill me in a heartbeat. They don't give a damn about me. You don't think that black people don't think that? when they see that, how you treated a whole group, some of the poorest people in the country, the government knew what they were doing. The government knew it. The government wanted to kill those people off. And you know what's even more evident? I didn't know this at the time because the news wasn't reporting that other countries were pouring in help. So other countries saw what was happening and was trying to send help. There were people around the country trying to send money and stuff, and the government denied them access to the stuff. Other countries, people in the United States who want to get together, and like, there were truck drivers. They had huge trucks full of food and supplies. The government wouldn't let them go in with it. This place hates black people. If they want to get rid of you, they're gonna just fucking do it. And they have so many ways. Food, they'll fuck with your food. Water, we already talked about the lead situation. I grew up with lead poisoning. I grew up in the Jordan Downs. Jordan Downs is now being torn down, and they're actually debating whether or not they should rebuild. They're starting to rebuild on it, but the more they dig into the soil, they realize how bad it was. So people who grew up in that area are permanently affected by lead poisoning. There is no amount of lead poisoning that's good for anyone, especially not children. So Section 8 housing, and those housings that they put people in, are purposely designed to cause harm. That's why a lot of those trailers, they don't use those trailers. They didn't get those trailers back. They actually ended up destroying those trailers that they gave to the individuals in Katrina because it had formaldehyde and other toxin and other carcinogenic agents in it, and other like poisons, right? And I can say this with almost certainty because I used to be a lab technician in an environmental lab. All we used to do was test samples, like earth samples and samples from homes, to see if they were inhabitable or not. So and this actually affected my ability to finish school. You know what I mean? When you grow up in an environment that's incredibly like racist and bigoted, you just know that you can't interact with certain people, like white people. I just knew it. If I had made friendships with a bunch of white people, I wouldn't have graduated. I'm telling you right now, it wouldn't have happened. I grew up in like a Jim Crow place. One of the dumbest things you can do as a black person is be friends with the white people in the Jim Crow area. Because you're not a friend. You're the token that they can play with. You're the Negro that is like, oh, you're the smart Negro friend. You're the one where they can run their racist jokes by. You're the one that is their comfort pet. I told you, black people in these people's lives, or people who think like these people, are emotional support dogs. We give them the flavor, the style. We're the emotional support dogs. We're there to sit there and absorb their trauma and their bullshit. And if we dare say anything, oh, we're no longer their friends, or we're literally being used for every little piece of our ability. So, and that's not something that I created. It's not an environment that I want to be in. When I grew up in that environment, it wasn't like something that you would like. Obviously, you want to interact with people in your environment, but they don't want to interact with us. They don't. That's why they poison the food. They put you in the worst housing, and they know the housing is worse because they test it. So there's no amount of stories that individuals from New Orleans can tell. There's no gruesome story that they can tell that's going to make this country, the government, see them as people who have like a beautiful history, beautiful like just beautiful people. They don't care. And the thing I did find interesting though was that how sustainable they were in the sense of like their community. Some of the people are saying like, oh, my grandmother has always lived here. That's our home right here. They lived, very, 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 very community based. And when you hear individuals from New Orleans talk about the space now, talk about the place now, they say it's not the same. It's not. How could it be the same? All these people died. And then also, as I stated earlier in this conversation, was that there are people in the homes who never, there's the bodies are still there. They did, listen, not only did they do the black people there wrong, the living wrong, they did the dead wrong, and there's never been accountability for it, never. And I just remember and that makes me sick to my stomach because it makes me think about people that, I remember Oprah was talking about this when it happened. I remember when Brad Pitt, now we know what kind of piece of shit he is now. Jesus. Oprah is a piece of shit. We know that. I remember they did a whole thing where he had some kind of charity. He was supposed to be trying to build back the homes in a certain area, and apparently all of that was BS. It's just these America ain't shit, man. America ain't shit, man. America ain't shit. And I'm not gonna pretend like it. I'm not gonna pretend. I'm just not gonna pretend. And the reason I'm not gonna pretend is because and try to make the best of it. I'm not gonna make the best of it. I'm not gonna pretend because those black people, some of the poorest in the country, tried to do that, and this country said, "Why aren't you dead yet?" And then blew up a levee, let these people drown, let these people suffer for weeks on end, and then the suffering just hasn't ended. You're never gonna convince me that this country is anything more than what it is, which is a piece of shit. You're not. You're just not gonna convince me of anything else. I get up every day and I go to work. I get up every day and go to work and I do what I'm supposed to do, and I try not to commit any crimes because essentially I don't want to go to jail. But honestly, who wants to do any of this stuff? Why would anybody be motivated to do anything in this country when you realize this is how they view you? Why would anybody black want to be nice to anybody? It's remarkable that any black person wants to smile and walk around at any point. It's amazing that there's black people who walk around sober. These people wonder why people be drinking themselves to death. It's a horrible realization when you realize you're in an environment where everybody fucking hates you. Because then you think even if there are people in the country that like you, love you, and want to help, they don't even understand that they're not helping because the government is these ignorant people. They don't understand that this is the whole point. The whole point is to genocide these people. That's the whole point. So that's why I think when I watch the stuff with Gaza, I just be shaking my head I know y'all are trying, but this is literally what they've done. The American government is this. If they're not good at anything else, they're definitely good at they're fucking up people's lives, okay, and war and stuff. So that's all I want to say. I'm not saying stop resisting. I'm not saying not to express yourself. It's just after a while you just realize you motherfuckers just as evil, And that's why you see people just snapping off. You see people like Luigi just killing people. Another dude who just, snap, crackle, and popped at a CEO from Blackstone. The people just they're just gonna start losing it. They're just gonna be it should. And can you blame them? As somebody who works with people in trauma, can you really blame people who've gone through trauma and it hasn't been resolved, haven't taken the time to really resolve the issues? And you really think that people aren't gonna rebel? You really think people can only take so much? Even the strongest people have their breaking point. So, but that's not my problem. That's the problem of white people who run the country. And the reason I say that is because look at the economic distribution. So look at all the money that each group has. And overwhelmingly, it's white people in the country who control most of the wealth. So there's a strong correlation between having control of wealth and having a voice and power, being able to like make changes. So ultimately, what I'm saying is that people want so badly to use black people because we have a strong voice. But there's a reason why we're not out here protesting, doing certain things anymore. There's a reason why. You just want to lock us up. You hear us. You know what's going on. Stop it. You want something to change, you'll change it. And this is why I'm just like, that's why I tell people, like, I'm not going out and protesting. Why? You cowards know what the problem is. So that's why I say I just get up, I go to work, and if I have to get into a situation where I have to like defend myself or something like that, then I'll do it. But putting my ass out on the line for other people, why? We see how y'all interact with black people. We see how you don't care about us. So anyway, just wanted to share that. It was a hard watch. It was a hard watch, and it wasn't shocking, but it was a hard watch. And to hear other people's stories and them sharing it, it's just so interesting to me because, again, as a person who studies trauma and disabilities, I'm just like, humans have a remarkable way of like dealing with loss, you know. But again, the one thing that was very consistent was just the looks, the faraway, like kind of blank stares, remembering what it was like. I know what that looks like. That's a trauma. You are reliving the trauma. And anyway, brave people, like, I don't know. I even think about the students that I knew when I was working in the education system, and we would talk about, they would share, and I'm very proud of where they come from, very proud of being, you know, from New Orleans and all that stuff. But you could see, like, when you would bring it up, it was just like, the voice gets low, their shoulders kind of lean back, you know, fall forward. You can feel the weight of the memories taking over the people's, like, life, of their personhood at that very moment. So anyway, I just wanted to speak on that because I've just been thinking about it for the past couple of days, and I don't even know how people can even ignore some of this stuff and they go on with their days. Like, I just don't. This stuff leaves an impact on me, and I move in the world in such a way based off of how these things have like come into my life, you know. I even interact with people differently. I know this is like a long video, but I even interact with people differently when we have conversations now and I hear them talk about certain things. I'm just like, I couldn't stand being around this person. I couldn't stand around being around this person. I can't stand around being around this person because the depth of the conversation isn't even good enough, especially for things like that. You know, the other day I asked someone, we were going to have dinner, and I said, yo, how do you feel about the Katrina thing? And because this person's a black individual, they said, like, honestly, it's so hard to even, like, they're like, I didn't even watch it. Like, it's just so hard to even bring up that stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's a response that I expect. So, yeah. But anyway, I guess if you feel like you need to watch it again, then you can go ahead and do it. But I was more interested in hearing the stories from the individuals who survived and are still dealing with it to this day, and to know it just hasn't been fixed. Same thing with Flint. Flint is still dealing with lead. It's still a situation. So this country deserves everything it has coming to them, in the sense of like the most evilest shit. They deserve every horrid shit. I just wish black people didn't have to be here to deal with it. But this country deserves the worst shit. Anyway, peace.